Good morning and welcome to the Dan Beasley Show. This is a show about contemporary news issues that are just breaking in the news and have not been uh, sent to the mainstream media yet. Some of them have. Some of these things are off the beaten path, so to speak, and you may never hear from them again on another news media outlet. So let's start by saying that my name is Dan Beasley. I'm coming to you from Hartsville, South Carolina. Time is 6:53 a.m. It's on July 24th, 2013, on a Wednesday morning. And I welcome you to the show, and we'll get right into our news items. Fire breaks out on evacuated Gulf gas well. We know that the Gulf of Mexico has seen it more than its share of BP oil spills and hurricanes taking out oil platforms, and also the spills from the New Orleans Katrina incident. Well, now we're seeing another incident occur out of New Orleans, and this is an out of control natural gas well off the Louisiana coast. They caught fire late Tuesday, hours after 44 workers were safely evacuated from the drilling rig following a mid-morning blowout, a federal agency confirmed. No injuries were reported as a result of the fire. Eileen Angelico, a spokeswoman for the Bureau of Safety and Environmental Enforcement, told the Associated Press. She says it wasn't known what caused the gas to ignite. Wasn't exactly clear Wednesday how, but when crews would attempt to extinguish the blaze, BSEE said earlier Tuesday that a firefighting vessel with water and foam capabilities had been dispatched to the scene. Wild Well Control Incorporated was hired to try to bring the well under control. Angelico said Wild Well personnel approached the well earlier Tuesday night before the fire, but they determined it was unsafe to get closer when they were about 200 feet from it. Moving along to our next news segment on this Wednesday morning, we have news coming from the drought out in the Midwest. Failed corn and sorghum crops have been reported in Kansas, and this is coming out of Wichita by way of the Associated Press through Yahoo News. Wichita, Kansas, in a good year. Corn grower Dennis McNitch can look over his green fields of tasseled corn shooting 7 feet high by this point in the growing season. This year, however, the corn on McNitch's farm is barely reaching 4 feet high, and much of it has turned brown. It's the third year of drought for the area, and much of McNitch's corn is dead. I'd say about 25% of my crop is gone, he said Tuesday in a phone interview. He is not alone. National Agricultural Statistics Service reported Monday that spotty rain showers this week have proved to be too little to improve drought conditions in western Kansas, and crops and pastures continue to suffer. Agency says it also received reports of failed corn and sorghum crops in areas missed by the rain, as well as fields damaged by hail or wind. By nature, you almost have to be an optimist, McNitch says. You head into it thinking possibly the drought is over. Harvest is somehow going to get satisfaction for all this hard work, and then just basically you watch it start withering away. Corn conditions across Kansas has declined so much that Agricultural Statistics Service reported this week that 30% is now considered in poor to very poor shape, and about 39% is rated fair, and 28% is good, and 3% is excellent. Among other crops affected is sorghum is 21% good, 43% fair, 30% 40. I'm sorry, 21% is poor to very poor, 43% is fair, 34% is good, and 2% is excellent. And of course, there's other crops affected as well that we won't go into at this time. NASA is reporting a comet that is going to be potentially called the comet of the century. And here we are at 2013. So there's a lot of years left in the century. So this must really be an outstanding show to be taking place out in space. Um, a comet that could put on a dazzling show when it zooms through the inner solar system later this year is already blasting out huge amounts of gas and dust, new observations by a NASA spacecraft show. Images taken on July the 13th by NASA's infrared Spitzer space telescope revealed that dust and carbon dioxide gases are streaming off a comet ISON, forming a tail of about 186,400 miles long. We estimate ISON is emitting about 2.2 million pounds of what is most likely carbon dioxide every day, which is 120 million pounds of dust, and not to mention the 2.2 million pounds of carbon dioxide. And previous observations at the Swift Gamma Ray Burst mission and Deep Impact spacecraft gave us only the upper limits for any gas emission from ISON. Thanks to Spitzer, the telescope, we now know for sure that the comet's distant activity has been powered by gas. So anyway, this is something for you to watch for as it makes its way into the inner solar system. Coming soon, the Islamic Society, or the Islamic groups across America, have won the right for Islamic no-go zones. An expert on terror training camp says the expansion plans are in the work. Coming soon to dozens of locations across the United States, America's own no-go zones where Muslims install their own courts, government, justice, and punishment, much like the zones that already exist across the European Union. This kind of flies in the face of the Constitution because everyone is supposed to be under the same laws. That is according to Martin Maurer of the Christian Action Network. His organization has been so strong in its opposition to radical Muslim expansion in the U.S. He's been targeted in a $30 million defamation lawsuit by a group called Muslims of the Americas, founded by Pakistan Sheikh Mubarak Ali Jilani. And the claims are that the Muslims of the Americas were damaged by CAN's publication of the book Twilight in America, the untold story of the Islamic terrorist training camps inside America. The book accuses the Muslims of the Americas of acting as a front for a radical Islamic group called Jamaat al-Fuqar, and CAN leaders told WND World Net Daily Tuesday that the case is at the stage of exchanging documents in preparation for further discovery. Maurer recently told Fox News that leaders of the Muslim organization feel that they have to defend themselves to their own members because they have expected the case to be dropped, and it's based on the claims of a New York informant who posed as a member of the Muslims groups and alleged it was involved in street crimes, drugs, brothels, unemployment fraud, and other offenses. There's no question that terror training camps exist across the U.S. According to a documentary, Homegrown Jihad, the terrorist camps around the U.S. There are nearly 3 dozen Islamic terrorist training compounds operating under the names of Muslims of the Americas. So it looks like we're in for some nasty weather there coming on the political front from the Muslims in America. They're running their own terrorist training camps and on our own homeland. Next news item coming up, U.S. city looks to penalize Bible believers. Can you believe this? Critics charge anti-bias requirement punishes people with moral convictions. And this is coming from Liberty University online, and it's coming from a reporter named Bob Unruh. And he says the thing. It starts out. It says things is hot. You think it's hot in Texas these days? Just wait a few weeks until the San Antonio City Council ends its summer hiatus and resumes the work on a proposed change to its non-discrimination ordinances that apparently will discriminate against all who take the Bible at its word and follow it. That's because the change creates a penalty for those who ever exhibit a bias. A bias is your particular political feelings towards a particular subject. And if you exhibit a bias, which would be a negative bias, of course, then that would say that you would be against homosexuality, you would be against Muslims, you would be against sinners, you would be against drunkards, and you would be against sodomy and everything else. This, which clearly could include adopting the Bible's condemnation of homosexuality with a permanent ban on participation in city government, business, or employment. In other words, you're not going to be able to work. You will not be able to own a business or run a business, and you will not be able to be a politician or work for the city of San Antonio if you are a Christian and you believe the Bible. Opponents of the plan, which would add sexual orientation and gender identity and non-discrimination to the non-discrimination ordinances, charge it is a violation of Constitutional Article Article 6, Paragraph 3, which states, no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States. The opponents explained that ordinance would bar anyone from office who has demonstrated a bias against someone based on categories that include sexual orientation. If this isn't a gag order against the church, I don't know what is. The proposal, however, does not define bias. According to the church leaders, could mean someone who declares homosexual behavior is sinful. The new ordinance would state no person shall be appointed to the position if the city council finds that such a person has, prior to such proposed appointment, engaged in discrimination or demonstrated a bias by word or deed against any person, group, or organization on the basis of race, color, religion, national origin, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, veteran status, age, or disability. And this is retroactive, obviously, because all the way back it says if you have ever in your entire life have made any kind of disparaging remark against any of these people or have engaged in any kind of religious activity that was against it, then of course you're excluded from all of these things of which all Americans should have freedom to participate in. So it is really disenfranchising the Christian community. Anyone in office who demonstrates a bias would be considered guilty of malfeasance and removed from office. Can you believe this, folks? The religion of tolerance has become intolerant. Church leaders who oppose the proposed changes argue it violates First Amendment rights, freedom of speech, freedom of association. It also violates Texas Religious Freedom Act and the Texas Constitution. Pastor Charles Flowers of the Faith Outreach International, who's been alerting city residents about the issue, told One News Now that the reference to bias could mean anything. The ordinance says that you have at some point to demonstrate a bias. Without defining what a bias is or who will determine whether or not one has been exercised, you cannot get a city contract. Flower says neither can any of your subcontractors who have demonstrated a bias. He called the measure unprecedentedly wrong and said the cities of San Antonio must stop it. How many pastors are concerned? Reported KHOU TV's Joe Conger in Houston. He says, if you ever had a Paula Dean moment, make an off-color joke, or hold a religious belief, Congress is. Pastor Steve Branson of Village Parkway Baptist Church says, keep it to yourself if you're involved.